Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 79 of Paranormal Pendle. Now, I've got a really great guest, a returning guest. I've had this gentleman on the podcast a couple of times now, actually. We've spoken about all sorts of stuff. His resume, if that's the right word, is extremely interesting. There's a lot of stuff on there that I'm going to have to get this gentleman back to talk about because he's got a wide range of knowledge about a wide range of subjects, and some of them are of a particular interest to me, which we'll go into later. But Mark Olly, thank you for joining me again. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Pleased to be back.
Good.
Made it through to another year.
We
Still
have,
here.
we have, which is always a
Yeah,
bonus, isn't it? I think
yeah.
when you get to a certain age, when you wake up in the morning, it's a bonus.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And I'm now getting to that age where things are definitely starting to creak a little bit. So
Yeah.
I've got
Uh,
got a significant birthday later on this year. So
oh,
not particularly, I'm not going to tell you what it is.
no.
You'll have to guess. In fact, if anybody would like to guess in the comments at what my significant birthday is going to be, uh,
Oh, now then, that's a risky thing to say. Anything could happen.
hopefully you won't be
Yeah.
too cruel. Um, let's get right into what I've asked you on the podcast for,
Hmm.
Mark. So, Europe's Roswell. You've written a book
Yes.
all about the. Now you've coached me on how to say this. The Clonilla UFO crash in.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got it right. In Wales on the west coast near Aberystwyth, I believe.
That's it.
Which is an area that I'm not particularly familiar with, to be honest. North Wales, yes. South Wales, a little bit. West Wales, not so much. So, what's the area like then? What's the topography like?
It's like I suppose it's like the lowlands of Snowdonia. As you either approach Snowdonia or go away from it, you end up going down valley after valley after valley,
Yeah.
with sort of hills in the distance. Well, obviously, it's not on a par with Snowdonia. It's not that kind of height.
Mm.
Um, but there is a connection because they do say that there is a UFO triangle,
Ah,
and that the bottom of the triangle, the bottom point, if you like, is Aberystwyth. So it
right.
goes kind of up from Aberystwyth, right beyond Snowdonia, down the Mersey Valley, and then back on itself again. There's a lot of activity in that top sort of triangular area. And this is the bottom of that. We're down at the bottom edge of that. So it's like valleys going down to the sea, really.
Yeah.
It's quite dramatic coastline.
Yeah, it is.
Mm,
I know I know around Anglesey and North Wales, because North Wales isn't particularly that far really from where I live. You know, you can do it
yeah.
in a couple of hours.
Mm.
Um, I mean, does it extend out into the sea? Has there been sightings over the sea, or are they mainly land-based sightings?
Well, Aberystwyth looks across the sea because it's at the back end of a sort of bay. It's in a sort of U-shaped bay, and it's a big bay. Don't get me wrong, and it's sort of at the back end of that. So you you're quite sheltered. You can see why they put Aberystwyth where they did. But then stuff's renowned for coming up out of Cardigan Bay, which is this bay. Stuff gets seen there all the time. I only fairly recently discovered that the Coast Guard has a telephone number to the local RAF base, and every time they see something coming up out of the sea, because it happens quite frequently, they just phone the RAF. They phone the base and report it in. So it's common to see stuff down that neck of the woods. And this crash, of course, I mean, Clonilla's not too far inland. It's probably 10 or 15 miles away from Aberystwyth, just coming inland. So it's on the bit where your hills, your countryside, your mountains, your valleys are beginning to drop off as they go down into Cardigan Bay. Nice. It's a nice area.
So, what exactly happened then, and when did this incident take place?
Right, okay. You can't be 100% specific. What we've had to do is look at different aspects of the story and things that have come out to deduce that it must have happened either literally in the last 1 or 2 days of the December, or first couple of days of the January. So I'm going to go with the January, which would have been 1983. So either side of New Year, as you're going into the new year in January 83. It happened in the middle of the night. Nobody saw it, nobody heard it. There were no explosions, there was nothing reported. It's only a tiny village. Um, but the farmer went to bed on the sort of the day before this thing happened, before this incident, and he said just he's got a little farm, bottom of the hill, and it's surrounded by sheep fields, and he said everything was fine. He just had fields full of sheep, a little woodland on one side, farm on the other. That was it. He went to bed, no problem. He said he got up the next morning, and all four of these sheep fields are just covered in what he described as tin foil, pieces of what appeared to be crashed debris, bits of mechanics machinery, girders, what have you. But the thing that struck him most was that there was nothing substantially solid like an engine or a cockpit or a UFO sticking out of the ground with bodies hanging out of it. It wasn't like that. But the debris that he described that he found on the following day sounds for all the world like the stuff they found at Roswell. So it's like a sort of tin foily type substance that, you squeeze it, it returns to shape, or you can't squeeze it because it doesn't move. It's that sort of thing. So that's where we are. We're at the beginning of January of 1983. Do you want me to crack on?
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I'm just interested in the material really because it sounds doesn't sound like anything that we produce, on Earth. Uh,
Well, that's what really does it with this particular incident. I mean, the circumstances were reported in a one single press article that came out in the Sunday Express, which I think was something like the 26th of January. So eventually it filtered through to the press. They put this out, which then it got sent to a guy called Gary Rowe, who runs the local UFO society for that UFO triangle.
yeah.
And he turned out with a small team and he tried to recover it, some of this material. But what he actually said was that the police that had been informed by the farmer had then contacted the RAF base, who said, "Oh, hang on a minute, leave it with us. We'll see what we can do." 2 hours later, there's a crash recovery team there, and they spend all day and all night and they clean everything. They just totally clean up. He said there was even some guys in black suits ordering everybody else around. So you're on the Men in Black
Yeah.
territory there. However, back to the story of material, because that's an important question. When Gary gets there, he realizes that although the fields have been completely cleared, there's a wooded copse on the edge of one of these fields, and it looks like it's had this like a 25-foot wide swathe cut out of the top of it. So he concludes, based on the direction that whatever it was that did that was traveling, that the material was sprayed out from the woods. So this whatever it was wasn't designed to come into contact with trees, and the trees had smashed all this material off the underside of it. The thing itself had obviously flown off, having lost quite a considerable amount of material. Anyway, when Gary gets in there and he starts poking around in amongst the trees and bushes, he realizes there are a couple of fragments stuck in the trees. So they actually recover on that visit. They recover six pieces to get half a dozen bits of debris. And one of the pieces is quite substantial. It's quite big. So he says to the farmer, he says, "Oh, I'll come back and give us a week or so. We'll pop back and we'll see if we can get any more. Bring metal detector machines and this, that, and the other." Anyway, he gets a phone call about a week later and off the farmer who says, "Well, there's no point you coming back. They're removing the forest. They're cutting it down and taking it away and bulldozing it. So you won't find anything if you come back." Back to your question, the material. This is where, I mean, I'm going to fast forward now. I did a documentary on it in 2008. We did the book that was 25th anniversary of the crash. We did the book for the 40th anniversary of the crash a couple of years ago. So now you're into the last 2 years, really. We did some analysis of the material that appears at the end of the book, which is called Europe's Roswell 40 Years Since Impact. Dead original title. In fact, the original documentary was called Europe's Roswell. So if anyone wants to go out there and find it, it'll be out on YouTube.
Keep getting your plugs in, that Mike. Go on.
Ah, well, there you go. You see, saves me doing an advert at the end. Um, so anyway, yeah, dash out buy the book. It's available on Amazon. We did the analysis for the book, and we ended up with quite a few of these analyses, which were interesting.
Mm,
One of them, Gary and his team had done because they'd got friends in British aerospace. So back at the beginning of the 1990s, he sent this stuff off to a friend of his, and his friend came back and said, "Look, we think that it's duralumin. We can't do anything sophisticated in terms of analysis because that is too costly.
mm,
It looks like it could just be a piece of an experimental aircraft. We don't know what it is, but it's nothing. It's not one of ours. It's nothing that we recognise. If it's duralumin, that has been around since the First World War because they invented that for airships, and it's just an aluminium alloy. That's all it means." And that was the best that Gary could get. So when it came to us doing the book, Gary has never let any of this material go. I mean, you can imagine he guards it with his life.
mm.
So the publisher actually contacted Gary and said, "Look, we've got an opportunity here. We can, do something with it. Send us some bits." The next day by express courier, he got a few pieces of this debris. So we're like, yes, we could do this. So we did a sort of a blind test. We sent one off to a laboratory in Australia, and we sent one off to a laboratory in the USA. So the Australian one came back first. And when it came back, the Australians are like, "Well, it's not aluminium. It's something else. It's some kind of weird alloy. We're not really sure what it is. We can't really identify the glue that's on it. The painted surface is not aerodynamic. We don't know what the rubbery stuff is on this debris. We can't tell you what that is. But we think that the resin is possibly an American type of epoxy glue." And they gave the number. So at this point, me and Gary are like, "Well, that's it. That's the end of that. That's finished it off. It's, going to be one of ours, isn't it?" Almost within 24 hours, we got the next set of results back, which are American. So remember, the Americans are going to know what American epoxy glue looks like. So this analysis comes winging back. Anyway, it blew our socks off because was it 94.6% lanthanum or lanthanum, and the other substances were equally unidentifiable. And basically, the upshot of that, lanthanum or lanthanum, that appears in everything. It's everywhere. Okay. It's as common as soil. But the problem with it is because it's so common, it is too costly for us to extract it. Okay. There's traces of lanthanum in everything. It's on the new part of the periodic table. It's on the bit they've added on since you and I were at school. There's a new bit at the bottom. It's the first one. LA is the first one on the new bit. It's in asteroids, it's in comets, it's in the upper atmosphere, it's in galaxies, it's everywhere. It's all over the place.
I've never heard of it.
No, well, neither had I. And that's the kicker. Nobody else has either.
Mm.
We contacted all our contacts because we've got friends in the military and we've got people in analysis and in the UFO community. And there's even one guy actually who's a professor and he did this debunking video for YouTube like they always do. "Oh, we know what this is. This is the tail part of an American bomber. And so I sent him quite a polite email and I just said, "What can you tell me about lanthanum?" Anyway, he just wrote back and he went, "What? What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Well, that's what this metal is. It's made of lanthanum." Anyway, within 24 hours, his debunking video had gone. He took it down because obviously it's nonsense. It doesn't match what we've got.
Yeah.
So we then very recently, even since doing the book, we've done another analysis. We had the opportunity to send it to a lab in Greece. So we sent it to the Greek lab, and the upshot of that is that they came back really and supported what we already knew from the three previous tests. So it isn't one of ours necessarily, or if it is, it's something so special that nobody's ever seen it ever anywhere.
Mm.
It's got this strange resin on it, which is a resin, but we're not sure what it is. It's not duralumin. There's very little aluminium in it, only traces of it. The Greek lab did come back and say, "Okay, this rubber surface made up of hexagons that's all over it, billions of hexagons, They said this is really unusual because if you knew how to control it, it's electrically conductive. They
All right.
said, so if that was the shell of this thing, you could send signals all over it. It'd be like sitting inside a giant printed circuit,
Yeah.
flying inside a circuit. So they said that would be really useful. So that was a new thing to come out of it.
And what
Um,
what did they think the reason for that was then? What would that make it the craft more maneuverable, do you think, or would it be some sort of new propulsion system that we don't know about?
Well, at the very beginning, what we thought was wherever you've got things located within the craft, you can send like signals to it or electrical charges to it or whatever. But one of the other qualities of lanthanum, is that it is absolutely 100% stealth.
Right.
It bounces back whatever you throw at it.
Right.
And they had a shock when they did this in America because they fired an electron microscope at it to try and get, some
Yeah.
decent photos of it and to magnify it, and it just fired back. So all they got was a distorted image. So we're now thinking, well, maybe this idea of having an electrically charged shell is something to do with invisibility
Some
or
sort of stealth.
speed,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
stealth, or some way of protecting it. Unfortunately, not against trees. But so you can imagine it's like flying through whatever it flies
Yeah.
through, portals, dimensions, space, whatever. And it's in a bubble. It's trapped inside its own bubble,
Yeah.
which is stealth to anything that's outside it, but also electrically protectively charged in itself. But then when it slows right down, if this thing materialized on top of a forest
Yeah.
and slid across the top of a forest, all the low impacts, the low energy impacts that are hitting it underneath, just broke this stuff like eggshell. And when we were trying to get the samples, Gary over the years has realized that the only way you can get the samples is to wiggle them off with a set of pliers. If you attack it with a hammer and chisel or you try and drill it, it pushes the energy back. So you can't do it. It actually pushes whatever gets pushed against it back.
So
So in some ways, it's brilliant. It's really useful stuff. A couple of folks have said over the years they wish they knew how to make it, and what they
well,
can do with it. But
I can imagine. I mean, I'm surprised that the American lab. Well, I'm surprised that some of this stuff hasn't been passed on to, these labs at respective military.
well, we've had two sets of folks recently look at it from a military perspective,
Right.
and they're just equally baffled. I mean, the only thing we can think of is the guys that came and collected it. Obviously, they've got the rest of it. There's tons of this stuff somewhere,
Right.
um, you know, stuck in a basement somewhere. So all they're doing is just not saying anything. They're just completely silent about it. As far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist. You might find out if they ever get around to doing disclosure. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is something I wanted to talk to you about later. But I mean,
yeah,
it's interesting this, isn't it? Because it they're obviously going to find it very difficult to destroy this material if they've got 4 fields worth, which is
worth, yeah.
obviously, a fair old pile when you get it all together. I would imagine they're going to find it very difficult to destroy it, aren't they? Get rid of the.
Well, what the farmer described was some of these sheets that were lying on his fields were 2 meters square. They were kind of 6 foot square sheets. One of those sheets is more lanthanum than has ever been known to have been extracted in the entire history of mankind.
Right.
And that's just one sheet. This covered 4 fields. So goodness only knows, who it was and where it came from. And again, you've got to consider this is 1983. So if this is up in the air and it's flying and it's functional technology, it must have come out of the late 1970s. There's nothing, absolutely nothing that comes close to this.
So it's not likely to be any sort of let's say American stealth technology or any sort of weather balloon type technology or anything like that.
I
No.
like I like the choice of weather balloon. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities between this and the real Roswell.
Yeah, there are, yeah, which I think is
The,
interesting. I'm not
yeah,
I'm not trying to debunk anything at all. In fact, I can see there's a lot of similarities, isn't there, between the two?
Yeah. Well, one of the best things we did, and this came out after we did the book as well. We did a lot of freedom of information requests. Obviously, anybody anywhere that we thought would know anything, we did the police, we did the RAF, we did everybody that we could get our hands on, all the military databases, everything. And I think we did 5 freedom of information requests in total up to fairly recently. And all we got right across the board, which is what you would expect, was a blanket no, we don't have anything. But right at the very end, we had one outstanding, and that was the Central Office of Information at Kew. Because down at Kew in London, they keep everything. They file everything. So we wrote this freedom of information request down to Kew. I don't know if it's a man or a woman that wrote back, but I can almost imagine them smiling when they wrote this, because they sent back this thing where it said, we cannot possibly comment on this incident because people that were involved in this are still living. We're sealed for 70 years. We can't give any details out. This, that, and the other. So we're sat there reading this. We're thinking, okay, right. Number one, you've just admitted it happened.
Mm,
Number two, you've just admitted that the stories of the crash recovery crews and all that, that's true.
yeah.
You've admitted you've got a record of it. So clearly we're not barking up the wrong tree. So basically this freedom of information thing, it just admitted without admitting it that everything we'd said was the case.
Yeah.
So it's now drifted out of this idea of, well, he said, she said, they said it. It's now drifted into, well, it definitely happened. It's a fact.
Mm,
There was a recovery, there was something that came down,
yeah.
and they were aware of it in 1983. They just not wanted to say anything over the years. But over 40 years, you'd think that somebody somewhere had come out and say something by now.
Well, you'd have thought so. I mean, is the farmer still alive that you know of?
No, this is a sad thing. I think it was 2 years ago. Irwell died, Irwell Evans. It's funny because when I did the documentary in 2008, you can imagine that Irwell was not really, he wasn't wanting to appear on camera. He
No,
didn't he didn't want the site or his farm or the location or anything given away. He wasn't interested.
farmers do tend to be
Yeah, that's what he was
very
like.
closed
And
door, don't they, to this sort of thing, really.
yeah, and when we did the documentary, everybody said, "Why didn't you put the crash site in?" Well, I think it's either the second or third panning shot in it is the crash site, and I mean, 4 fields full of sheep in winter
Yeah.
don't make good television. It just, but it's in there. Trust me, I did film it, and the woods, of course, is gone, so
Mm,
that's kind of changed the dynamic a bit.
that's
But
interesting.
now his son has picked up the mantle, and he's in the same position. He's not keen on giving anything away.
No.
He's sort of batted it down the hatches. But the thing is, there's nothing there really. There isn't anything more to add to the original newspaper story. So and again, we've done what they did at Roswell. We've stuck absolutely rigidly to the information we have,
Mm,
to the analysis, the freedom of information, the original report. And when like I say, when I did the documentary, I really did, go knocking on doors and asking people and investigation and what have you. Because when they brought me in, it was a case of, oh, archaeologist, let's get an archaeologist in. If there's anything down there, we'll dig it up. And I was very skeptical. I was like, okay, I don't know. This could be a career ender, if I'm not careful. And then he uttered the immortal words, Gary. He said, "Well, I've got 4 pieces of it in a case in my garage." And I'm like, "Oh, have you? Okay."
I thought
Well,
the
that's a
immortal
bit.
words might have been payment, but
No, no, no. Actually, funnily enough, I don't think anybody's ever made money off this. I mean, the company that did the DVD with me, they put like copies of it out on DVD.
mm,
And it wasn't picked up by anybody. No, nobody paid it any attention. But they were an American company, so we think it was silenced. We think in
possibly.
2008 it was
Yeah.
shut
I
down.
mean, I've just noticed actually. I was looking on Google just then. I've got the page up now, and I noticed that it's actually on Audible as a as an audio book.
Yeah, they also managed to get it onto Amazon Prime. Don't ask me how they did that. So
Well,
it is out there.
I've got a credit on Audible, so I'm going to be downloading that when we finish this, and I will listen to it.
Oh, thank you. You will enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting story. I
Yeah.
mean, just going back to, I mean, I've got a lot of questions.
Mm.
First one, obviously, is what did this material feel like then when you actually held it in your hand?
It's considering, I mean, I've held quite a large piece of it, so considering I had access to a piece that was quite substantial, it doesn't have a lot of weight. It's quite thin. I mean, all the te people that have done the tests have measured it in millimeters. So your layers are all sort of millimeters. So by the time you finished it, it's a quarter of a centimeter at its thickest. It's that kind of, but it doesn't weigh anything. When you hold it, it feels, I don't know really. There's a lot of people have held it and they've sort of said it feels a bit like space material. That seems to be a common description. Um, Gary, when he got this big piece, when he had this bit that's like nearly a foot long, he actually stamped on it to find out what it would do. Because obviously it's concave, so it collapsed, and then he just popped back up again straight away, like he hadn't got anywhere near it. So the more force you put in, the more it just comes back the same. The painted surface is matte finish, which is a bit of a puzzle because you wouldn't do that if you were trying to be aerodynamic. But then if you look at the other side of it, and it's covered in all these billions of little tiny hexagons, so that's not aerodynamic either. Um,
Did
we did
anybody do any analysis on the paint or what you describe as paint?
well. It's nobody seems to know, if I'm being honest. The levels of microns to which you have to go to get that. I mean, you would think you'd just point a gun at it and that's what it is. But no, apparently the paint, the resin, and the rubberized surface, that's the best description they can give to that.
Mm,
The chemical breakdowns are just, fairly mundane. The other point I made is that if this thing is made anywhere in this universe, then they've got the same materials to work with we have. So why would there not be similarities as well as differences? So that avenue doesn't really flatten the case. It doesn't knock it out of the ballpark. It's I mean, they would do something like we would do it. They would just do it differently.
with the
And that,
materials that they had to hand that
yeah, with yeah,
suited the purpose.
yeah, and that's what it seems to be. Everything that's on this material seems to be doing what we would do, but far better.
Mm,
In far better ways than we ever would. I mean, lanthanum wasn't in the periodic table, I don't think, in 1983. So it does raise the question. Have we back engineered it? Now we've got the material. It might be out there now. They might be doing something with it now. But they weren't doing it back in the 80s, that's for
no.
sure.
Well, chemistry was never my strong point, so the periodic table is an utter mystery to me, to be honest. But
Well, yeah, I put it in the book. I put it in the book with the little squares highlighted because I know it's not my big thing either. So,
I mean, it's interesting then. Just going back then to when this happened, um, what was recovered was obviously not the whole of the craft. It was part of the craft, probably the underside
yeah.
of the craft. And I suppose you could be forgiven for postulating that the rest of the craft was covered in the same material,
Mm,
which is why nobody saw it, because it was obviously, as you described, in some sort of stealth mode.
mm. It's interesting because there's a slight difference between two of the pieces of metal that we've got.
Right.
And then we've got two pieces of honeycomb, which are not they're not sheet metal, they're literally honeycomb, as the name suggests. So what we think the structure was that you've got the outer shell, which is made of this metal, which is just flat. There's nothing on it. There's no rubber or anything attached to it. It's just flat. Then you've got sort of hexagons which seem to be bonding the honeycomb to the metal. So it's a dual purpose. It's a way of attaching this honeycomb to it. And then you've got the inside, the internal surface is the lanthanum, which again has the hexagons on one side, but it's got paint on the other. So you've got this sandwich, which would then form the thickness of the shape of the hull.
Yeah.
So we think it's curved, and we think that sandwich is what's been broken up and scattered.
Mm.
Um, there you go.
So the craft, you think, just skimmed the tree line and then disappeared, went. There's no recording of any other areas anywhere that we know of at the same time where more of the craft came down.
Not from that specific craft. The whole area has been renowned for 30 or 40 years for strange things happening. If you go further up one of the valleys, and this frustrates me no end, you'll get to the point where you've got the Berwyn Mountain incident, which everybody, bangs on about, and everybody gets this one mixed up with the Berwyn Mountain incident, which again is supposed to be another flying saucer craft, but they have no evidence. There's no physical evidence for that at all. It's all, he said this and she saw that, and lights, and it's all that sort of stuff. And some people in the village there believe it, and some people don't. So that particular incident is yet another incident in a long, long list
Mhm.
of these that just continually happen. Flying triangles are another thing that turns up in that area. Flying discs are seen frequently. Like I say, things come up out of the bay. They're seen all the time, and very often they come up and go inland. So it's really hot. It's a hot area for UFO activity.
Seems strange that nobody saw anything um, during
Well,
that evening, doesn't it? I heard
it's
it.
it's a frozen, snowy hillside a mile and a half away from the nearest settlement.
Right.
So Wales can be pretty bleak. If anybody else did see anything, they're not willing to talk about it. That's the main thing. And in the newspaper article, they do mention a few other things. I mean, they say the police were there doing this, that, and the other, and the Air Force were there doing this, that, and the other, and so on. But then that raises the question: where did they get the newspaper article from? Which we dug into and dug into and dug into. It was interesting because the guy that wrote it was a guy called Andrew Chapman, and he still works for the Sunday Express. So when we did the documentary in 2008, we got in contact with him. And he said, "Oh, leave it with me, lads. I'll go and have a look in my notebooks and I'll see where this came from." So he goes all the way back in his notebook. So we get this really confused email back, and he's like, "I can't find where this has come from." He said, "The only conclusion I can make is that we all came back after New Year, which would have been whatever it was, 3rd of January or something. We all came back, and then all the new stories were handed out to different, reporters to write up. And he got this one. But there's nothing in the article that tells you where it came from. And he can't find out where it came from. And as I said, it didn't appear anywhere else.
No,
But
so
it's
it's not
true.
no source. Yeah,
Yeah, it's proven to be true. But they interviewed like they interviewed a few other people, and it comes out in the article. So they must have it must have been Andrew that did it by phone, but he remembered it. He
yeah.
he remembered the incident.
Could it have been the farmer, do you think, who initially reported it, and then when these people started coming down and crawling all over his farm, he suddenly decided, no, I don't like this.
Well, we've over the years we've been quite generous, and we've said, oh, maybe it was one of the local police officers, or oh, maybe it leaked out from the airbase, but I suppose deep down inside, we're all thinking it was Irwell, because he was the one that phoned Gary. He was the one that phoned him up and said, "You don't believe what's happened. You need to come down here and have a look at this." So it's clear that he'd phoned a number of people.
Yeah.
But Irwell was so determined not to be publicly outed
Mm.
that we've kind of dodged that. You can
Yeah, I
tell
mean,
when you read the book, you'll see we dodged it. We haven't put
yeah.
him in very much.
I mean, I suppose I can understand that, he wouldn't want the area being suddenly descended on by a load of, you know, UFO chasers or
Yeah, ufologists. Yeah,
ufologists. Yeah.
yeah.
I suppose you can understand that. And I've heard stories of other similar incidents where farmers have been very, where things have happened on the land and they've been very closed about it. They won't speak to people. They won't allow people on the land. They won't discuss it with anybody. So I think that's quite a sort of common thing, really,
Mm,
within that community.
yeah.
Has anything happened since? I mean, it's 40 years ago. Have there been any similar incidents or any other sightings that you know of in that particular area?
We There's a bit of a team of us that have developed over the years. There's one chap that looks into the freedom of information stuff. There's Philip Mantle, the publisher. He does all the analysis. He's got that side of it. There's another guy who only very recently came onto the scene, and he went back and went back over all the research and the notes that I'd done. And the only thing that he could find anything like it, even remotely similar, was at some point, we're not really sure exactly when, but at some point in the early 80s, a tail fin broke off one of the RAF's stealth aircraft that was flying up and down the valleys.
Mm.
And they managed to get the tail fin back. But other than that's an isolated incident. There is nothing even, remotely like this anywhere close to the start of 1983. And I mean, one of the guys that was researching back for the documentary had the National Library of Aberystwyth, National Library of Wales at Aberystwyth at his disposal. And he trawled through everything that was available, even back at that point. And he didn't find anything else. That's how we know there's no other press. Um, it's been well and truly combed over, this one.
And I don't suppose there was any similarity in materials between the tail fin from the stealth fighter from the RAF and the material that you guys dealt with.
Well, that's where we've gone round in a circle because the guys that we've got on the team who are on from the military side of it, I mean, one guy deals in scrapped RAF material, which he sells to the general public. So, if you want a RAF helmet with ears, or a
Yeah.
seat or whatever, and he has literally got access to tons of material. Every time they scrap something, he just goes down there and he can take the pick of what he wants because it's gone. It's no longer useful. And he has got material. I mean, all fairness to him, he's got material with hexagons on it, that's covered in rubber. He's got material that's painted green. He's got bits of shiny silver metal.
Mm.
He even sells key rings that look, a little bit similar to what we've got. So I'm not going to deny there are similarities in that sense, but none of it's lanthanum. None of it matches the chemistry. Therefore, the qualities that we're finding in this particular debris, which again, a lot of what he's selling and what he's getting access to is decommissioned, but it's all post 1990s. It's not pre 1990s. Like I said, this technology would have had to have been developed in the 1970s.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's more likely to be highly classified, isn't it? So,
yeah. One of the things we did notice, there was a metal detector chap sent me some photos from America because he got hold of the story,
yeah.
and he'd wandered onto Matt Brazel's ranch at Roswell, and he'd pulled off about 5 or 6 very small pieces, and at least two of those pieces were almost identical to ours.
Oh,
He'd got honeycomb foil, and he'd also got a piece of metal that looked remarkably similar. So at the moment we're sat here, I mean, this is so new that we're just sat here waiting for the analysis results to come back from him.
yeah.
So there is other bits of stuff floating around, but not quite the same.
No, because I suppose skeptics at this point are going to say, well, it's obviously military tech, something skin the trees, a fighter plane or something. I mean, was the nearest RAF base or American base?
Um, I think it's less than 30 miles. I think it's
Uh,
25 miles, something like that.
yeah.
I haven't actually got the name of the base to hand. I think it appears in the book, but it's not that far away. But I
So I
think it's
suppose,
an RAF base. So did they have American
yeah,
technology
yeah,
on
well,
there? Would they say if they did?
yeah, but of course, I mean, the other side of the coin is that we're looking at a period in time where there were other very high profile incidents as well. I mean, Rendlesham was only a couple of years before, wasn't it? So,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah.
1980.
Coming out of the 70s into the 80s, it was, yeah, there was a lot going on, huge amount of stuff happening.
And it's interesting as to why you think that will be.
Um,
Why do you
I
think
don't,
that particular period in time was so
I don't know, you see, because
active?
when I've looked at it, you've always got these three alternatives. Is it one of theirs? Is it one of ours? Or is it something in between? Is it, back engineered technology? Um, so what I do is I fire the starting pistol at Roswell. So 1947, we know there was something pretty crazy flying around.
Mm.
Actually, there might have been two somethings because I think there were two crashes at Roswell. Two
Oh,
things hit each other and two craft came down, actually, when you look at it. Crash at Corona is the book, I think, for that. But that's pretty amazing to happen in America. So if you go all the way back to that and you say, okay, you've got all this post Second World War technology floating around, you've got Germans sending scientists to America, to Russia, to China, they're going everywhere, all the Nazi technology, you've got all that sort of thing going on. Where we are now, we're not far off 100 years
Mm.
away from the start of that. Where on earth could we have got in 100 years? That's a question that woodpeckers away at my brain all the time. So is there some kind of super secret stuff out there? Is this post Second World War super technology? And again, whose is it? I mean, this annoyed me when they were banging on in America about disclosure and oh, we're going to tell everybody, we're going to have disclosure, and then no, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are. And I'm like, oh, okay. This case, this material is already in the public domain. So why don't they just come out and tell us what the hell it is? Why don't they just come out and say that's what it is?
I think it's keeping it secret from the masses, isn't it? That's, if a small select number of people, such as yourself and your fellow investigators, they probably don't think you matter, because with all respect, there are a lot of people out there who have been debunked over the years,
Oh yeah,
and there are a lot of people who are viewed as being a bit loony.
yeah,
Who've come out with all sorts of stuff over the years, and yet you've got the really high profile cases that, like yourself with this, like Rendlesham, like Roswell, like Pascagoula, where obviously something's happened, but because there's not that many people know about it in the great scheme of things, or
yeah.
believe it in the great scheme of things, then perhaps the military think, well, we're going to cover it. Let's just not go into it, and then people won't ask too many questions. I mean, I was going to ask you about disclosure and what on earth is going on, and is 2026 going to be the year that they blah 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 blah? Because that's what they keep saying every year, isn't it?
Yeah, I've done my stint on Ancient Aliens, so I was on season 19, whatever it was, crop circles I did.
Okay.
But I've met lots of people that are connected to that circle.
Yeah.
Um, how on earth they let an archaeologist loose on a program like that, I don't know, because they knew they were in for trouble. I've not been back on since, by the way, but there you go.
Have you been
Like,
banned?
yeah, so I got chatting to an awful lot of folks, and each time they get to the point where they're going to say something, it's driving people nuts.
Hmm.
Like you say, I suppose there's only two ways they can go. One is to actually say nothing at all, or the other angle is to say far too much so that nobody takes it seriously,
Yeah.
blow it out of all proportion. But then there are a few dedicated souls, myself and my publisher included, Philip Mantle, he's trying to hold it all together. And I think Giorgio's got a heart of gold, and Eric before he passed away was they're just trying, we're just trying to solve a mystery, and to sort this thing out. But disclosure, as I say, why not? Why not just come out and blow the lid off it? I wonder if the technology that we started in the Second World War has gone in directions that they don't necessarily think the public are going to find acceptable. That sits with me. I think that could be the case. And every now and again, like you say, something happens, that you think, hang on a minute, that's not right. If it's real, because of course now we've got this other problem, because you've got AI going mental, and it's, I sometimes you can't tell the difference between, what's real and fake. I mean, it's driving the cryptozoologists mental because you've got all these weird hybrid, Spider-Men crawling up in the roofs and deep sea monsters and things being washed up on the shore that look like some kind of Chinese genetic experiment. You've got no idea whether they're real or not.
The same
But
with the paranormal, isn't it?
yeah,
Ghosts. Well, it
yeah,
is. The guest I had on for the last podcast, we had a chat about AI. He was quite knowledgeable about AI and the way that it's going, and how to potentially spot AI amongst genuine footage. But I think it's getting more and more difficult, as you quite rightly said.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a producer because I produce stuff, you know, and I've done documentaries and I work with television, work with ITV and Sky and people like that. And I mean, back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, you know, it was beginning to become a frustration, even within production, um, until people like Disney and the bigger production houses got hold of it, started to develop it. And now, like you say, there's only a few of us that have done that, that have been there through that journey that can really spot the difference. You know, it is so
That's
good now.
yeah, that's not easy.
Uh,
That's
it's not. It
no,
really isn't now.
it's virtually impossible, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting going back to what you were talking about technology because I've been reading books on Hitler and his alleged legging it to Argentina.
Mm,
Grey Wolf,
yeah,
Gerard Williams' book. I can't remember the other guy that he wrote. Simon Dunstan. Simon Dunstan, was it?
it could
Can't-
be.
Or,
Yeah.
or was he one that he said talked a lot of rubbish? I can't remember. But anyway, fascinating story. But there was obviously a lot of Nazis who disappeared not only to
Mm,
Argentina, but were actively hunted out by the Americans and taken back to America to work, like Werner von
yeah.
Braun, for instance, to work on the American space technology and everything.
Operation Paperclip. That's
That's
what
the
that
one.
was. That's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Operation Paperclip. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. I
so
mean,
I mean, who knows? The Germans were massively advanced, weren't they, in the
yeah.
technology towards the end of the war, and they weren't far off being able to develop a working nuclear bomb.
Yeah, yeah. There was a bunch of SAS guys went out into, I can't remember, it was, I think it was Austria. They had the type of water that you use for developing nuclear.
Yeah, the
uh,
heavy
Heavy
water.
water, that's it. They blew up the plant for that. They took that out. If they hadn't done that, they'd have gone nuclear way before anybody else. You know, they'd have been miles ahead of us. And again, the scientists weren't hunted down in quite the same way that, let's say, the prison camp guards were, or, you know, the SS or
More
whatever.
useful to the Americans at the end of the day, weren't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, and the
And
Russians.
and to
Yeah,
other countries as well. I mean, I know the Russians obviously got hold
yeah.
of quite a lot of them as well, but and I often wonder whether we did, to be
I
fair.
think we did. I think we did. I think the Chinese did as well. I think they pocketed certain ones out. There was some kind of a deal done at the end of the war,
Very,
and they sort of went out to develop the technology, you know, as we've got now in the 21st century.
yeah, you can just imagine the discussions at Yalta, can't you, between
Mm.
Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill as so they want
Oh yeah,
to divvy
yeah,
everything up. And I'm sure that the scientists and the technology were part of that discussion. So who knows what they developed and what sort of strange stealth technology, for instance, they were involved in.
yeah. I mean, there's a big theory that came out where after Roswell, I can't remember who it was that was interviewed, but somebody from the military was interviewed about the bodies that they recovered from the crash at Roswell, and he never referred to them as aliens. In the interview, he keeps referring to them as
Right.
those things. And people started to think, hang on a minute, were they genetically engineered to
Mm.
fit the craft? You know, because he never called them aliens, he never called them anything other than those things. And that's going back quite a long way. Anyone that's into UFOs and that will remember that interview. Again, it's what happens when all of these different technologies, you know, they had Das Glock, which was the bell that could transfer itself through time and space and dimensions. Then you had genetic engineering, then you had rocket science and nuclear and atomic science and technology. And well, what happens when all of these things meet? You know, they're going to come together in some form at some point.
Yeah.
And it has defined the 21st century. It has.
Absolutely. Well, it certainly defined the second half of the 20th century, didn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously going forward. I mean, you just mentioned about time travel. I mean, another one of the ones that I've always been fascinated with is the Philadelphia experiment. I mean, again, you've got
Mm.
to wonder, where did that technology come from? Because you don't just sort of come up with that sort of, alleged stealth technology from nothing. Is it some technology that they've recovered from crashed UFOs, crashed alien and crafts?
Well, I'm not going to blow too much about Europe's Roswell. I'm not going to blow the end of the book because there's a punchline at the end of it.
Okay.
But I've speculated about time,
Mm,
and everybody's like, maybe these are, aliens from another planet, or maybe they've come from our future to warn us, and I've never sat comfortable with any of that because there's a couple of problems. First of all, you can't get in and out of our planet in our dimension easily because you've got the Van Allen belts. So, how they get here from Mars through space with all the gas and the radioactivity and the debris and hot and cold. Well, that doesn't sit with me at all. And then you got this other idea. Well, they're coming from the future. Then you're going to hit a paradox. If they come back into their own past, they could end up erasing themselves. And
yeah.
then it suddenly dawned on me, if there's no time and there's no space, what if they come from our past?
Mm,
What happens if they are what we were when we started out at the beginning? Now,
yeah.
that actually explains a hell of a lot because if they're coming to their future and they're not, tied into dimensions, if they can come through portals and just appear and then go again, that explains why they're pinching people and they're nicking cows and abducting possums and, stripping all the food off a field. And they're doing all this sort of stuff. It's testing. They want to know where we are now
Mm,
because I think we're their future. And then you've also got, I always say it's the Star Trek syndrome. You've only got the budget to make your aliens look a certain way. Well,
yeah.
these aliens all look like us. They've got a head, they've got two arms and a mouth and two legs and a body. And I'm like,
Why would they be
yeah,
confident the same way as us?
exactly. If they come from Venus, they'd be a jelly, or why they're not a gas cloud, or
It'd be a bit cold for them here if they came from Venus, wouldn't
yeah,
it?
or a spider, you get a spider coming out or something like that. But they're almost all exclusively, 99% of the time,
Yeah.
blokes in silver suits or silver aliens, or, I can't
But
remember how many there are. There's 90 odd different variations of them now, I think.
maybe that's how they want us to perceive them, though.
Well, there is that as well. If they've
It's
got the
always,
technology to get here, they could bend time and space so that we see them the way they want us to see them. Hence all the humanoid, versions that
that's
turn
what we're
up.
comfortable seeing,
Yeah, yeah.
rather than I mean I used to love Babylon 5. I don't know whether you remember it or not,
Oh,
but
I remember Babylon 5. Yeah,
I mean the aliens in that were alien, weren't they? The
yeah,
Gorons and shadows and
yeah,
all the rest of them. Some of them were humanoid looking, but the vast majority of them, weren't.
yeah.
Um, which was refreshing, given, as you said, people were watching Star Wars and Star Trek, and they all look like us.
Yeah.
Just going back to disclosure, then? I mean, obviously, there's a fair amount of frustration, I think, from all of us.
Mm.
But I can understand why, you know, I don't know how many people on the planet now. Is it 8 billion and 9 billion, something like that? 9 billion people going into simultaneous panic mode. I don't think would be particularly good for society. Do you think we're going to find out anything new this year? Um, I mean, one question I would like to ask you, and I have mentioned this before actually to a couple of people that I've chatted with. Um, from what I can gather, when American presidents get into office, they are briefed on, they're allegedly briefed on
Mm.
extraterrestrials and UFOs and basically what they are. Now, you would think that certain presidents would be a little bit more eager to tell us about these things because they would like for their ego to be the one that tells us about it, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, yeah. If they thought it was good PR, you'd expect them to drop the ball.
The current president is obviously, he's the sort of person who would, if he had that information, I think he would be pushing for it to come out, unless he's been stopped by greater forces, shall we say.
Well, it's worrying because most people think JFK was going to be that person.
And that's why he was assassinated.
Correct. He didn't. ever make it to actually be able to do that. The thing that tickles me up with Trump is
Please,
he's,
please, Donald, please.
well, yeah, but he's got Elon Musk. You don't need to reveal an alien, do you? Because he's working with one, apparently.
That's very true.
So
And the rest.
yeah, I think Trump is in a different ball game because he started off as a businessman. He is basically a businessman, and he's working with other businessmen, and most of the other businessmen he's working with are technology developers. So I wondered if Musk is kind of working with Trump, and the pair of them are sort of pushing towards a future that is not a future they're sharing with us yet, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
That would explain why they're not going to just walk out one day and go, "Hey, we've just been invaded by aliens. Here they are, guys." They're not. I don't think they're going to do that. I think we will see the products of their working relationships before we ever see whatever's behind it, the reasons behind it. I can see where a lot of conspiracy theorists are saying, it's world council, secret societies, aliens, men in black, all this sort of thing, blaming it on everybody from like Freemasons and Catholic Church right the way through to goodness knows who, Skull and Bones, you name it. Um, I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I really don't. I think again, like you say, secrets. I mean, the Americans are doing a lot of work now that puts them into contact with people in the East, Middle East. Britain is now making noises towards China, and China are making noises back. Um, the whole dynamic that you and I grew up with is disappearing. It's vanishing. That I think will bring more disclosure, but not necessarily about aliens. Are we going to see a silver disc landing on the White House lawn anytime soon? Or maybe not. I don't know. Um,
Who knows?
or has it already happened? And that's where Elon comes from. I get what Elon means.
Yeah.
I don't think he's an alien, by the way. I'm not
No,
supporting the fact he's alien in the sense that he's not like anybody else on planet Earth. He doesn't
no,
think like us
he's
or operate like us.
detached from reality, isn't he, really,
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
who he's become. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that there is a massive push, isn't there, at the minute to get access to rare earth metals,
yeah.
which is obviously used in various forms of technology, and that, of course, I think we all know was one of the reasons why we've had this standoff with Greenland,
Yeah.
but also other. I mean, I don't want to get too political, obviously, but there are reasons why things are happening at the moment. The last week in January of 2026, when we're having this chat, who knows what's going to happen over the next few months, but there's certainly, I think, going to be a massive. I think I think AI is going to be a massive problem. I think there's going to be a jump in AI. I also think there's going to be a jump in some sort of technology where I think probably space technology is going to take a massive jump forward as well. I think we are going to be seeing people on Mars sooner rather than later because that's what they're pushing for.
Mm,
And I think a lot of this is being driven by, I do believe, the drip feeding um, technology from other sources, and they're beginning to understand how to use it.
mm. Well, they always say, don't they, the two things to do. One is follow the money, and the other one's follow the technology.
Yeah. And they're both inextricably linked.
They are indeed
I'm
very much
surprised I
so.
got the word inextricably out there one
Well
go
done.
because I was struggling. My jaw was. Do you know what, Mark? It's been absolutely amazing again, as always, to chat to you. I think
Pleasure.
such a knowledgeable gentleman. So the stuff you talk about is brilliant. I love it to bits. I really do. I think it's fascinating,
Yeah.
fascinating subject. Um, I will have you back on, and we'll have a chat about that when I finish the well,
Yeah.
when we stop recording, because there's like I said at the beginning, there's other subjects that
Yeah.
I really do find really interesting. But this is certainly a perplexing one.
Mm.
Is it something that you're still actively looking into? Are you still trying to get to the bottom of this, or have you got to a point where you think, do you know what, we can't go any further on this?
Well, it's the gift that keeps giving. I mean, I get to the point where I think, right, that's it, it's done and dusted. Let's put it to bed, which I did in 2008. I mean, that documentary took 5 years, 4 or 5 years to get to that.
Right, yeah.
And then I finish up with a publisher, which is the one I've got now, Philip, who's massively to UFOs. That's his
Yeah.
big thing. So book number 3 says, "Don't you think it's about time you gave me a book about UFOs?" And I'm like, all right then. So, it's back again. I'm still alive. Gary's still alive. I know that the farmer isn't anymore. That material's still out there, and it just balloons. It just gets bigger. And the more we seem to dig, the more it seems to be real. It's true. We're getting more and more information. I always say this about the book. Everyone's got all these books that don't have endings. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's the other, and this happened, and blurry lights and people's holiday photographs and all this kind of stuff. And it's nonsense. This is the missing end. This is the end. This is where you actually get to see the pieces of the material and parts of one of these vehicles, that physically exist with analysis. I mean, the book is heavily illustrated. If you listen to it on Audible, you need to get a look at some of the photographs and maybe track the original video DVD down, Europe's Roswell. Have a look on YouTube because the material,
Find
honestly,
it on YouTube, actually. Yeah, it is on
yeah, I
there.
mean, it's show and tell. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's show and tell.
Fascinating.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
no, it's not over yet. Hey, no, it's not over yet.
Only just started. So
Yeah,
where can people find you then? Obviously, as you said, YouTube.
yeah. Quick advert. I'll do a quick advert. All the stuff that I do, all 9 books, Amazon. Just
Right.
go on to Amazon, dead easy. Back catalogue. So if you want to go and have a look at previous documentaries, television stuff, interviews, whatever, YouTube. If you want to find me, I'm only on Facebook.
Okay.
So there you go, dead easy. You can message me on Messenger on there as well. So it's Amazon, YouTube, Facebook. That's it.
That's it. Fantastic. Thank you for giving up your time again, Mark.
All
It's
right.
really, honestly, really great to talk to you. It's a fascinating subject, it really is, and I think we could probably go on for hours.
Mm.
But I suspect that we should leave it for another time.
Okay.
So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you for coming on. Take care, and I will speak to you hopefully again very soon.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you.